Sometimes the most extraordinary stories don't begin with wealth, power, or fame. Sometimes they begin in a hospital room, under harsh fluorescent lights, with the soft hum of machines and a little girl fighting for her next breath. And sometimes the people who seem invisible, the ones in plain scrubs, walking the halls without notice, become the very souls who hold a broken world together. It was late. The room was filled with the beeping of monitors, each uneven pulse echoing the panic that filled the air. 3-year-old Sophie lay small and fragile beneath her hospital blanket, her body jerking in tiny spasms. Her breaths came quick, shallow, frightened. Her wide eyes fluttered, unfocused, as another seizure tore through her fragile frame. The doctor snapped open a drawer. "We need to administer diazepam. Now." His voice was sharp, efficient, leaving no room for hesitation. But then another voice rose, gentle but steady. "Wait," Maya said, stepping forward. She was calm, but there was an urgency beneath her tone. The doctor frowned, annoyed. The nurse at the monitor glanced over in disbelief. The physician relented with a sigh. "You have 60 seconds. Maya didn't waste a heartbeat. She moved to Sophie's side like someone approaching a sacred flame. The little girl flinched, her body stiff and trembling, but Maya bent carefully and lifted her into her arms. Sophie's muscles were tight, her tiny fists clenched, but Maya swayed softly, rocking her against her chest. Then she began to sing. Her voice was quiet, barely more than a whisper. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." The entire room seemed to pause. The frantic beeping on the monitor slowed, softened. Sophie's clenched hands loosened, tugging at Maya's scrubs instead of fighting the seizure. Her cheek pressed into Maya's collarbone. By the time the verse ended, Sophie's breathing had steadied, her tiny body calmer, her grip gentle but sure. The danger had passed. What Maya didn't know was that behind the privacy curtain, Adam Reyes, Sophie's father, stood frozen. He had come to check on his daughter, but the sound of that lullaby stopped him in his tracks. His wife had sung that same song every night. Even on the hardest days, she had hummed it softly through the baby monitor when Sophie struggled. And after her funeral, the music had died with her. Until now. Adam's hand gripped the curtain, shaking. He dared not step inside, dared not speak, afraid to break the fragile magic hanging in the air. He watched as Maya cradled Sophie with a tenderness that looked as natural as breathing. She whispered into Sophie's hair, laying her gently back down beneath the blanket. Adam saw her then, not as just a nurse, not just another uniform drifting in and out of his daughter's room, but as someone who remembered how to be gentle when the world had been cruel. Later, he learned her name, Maya Thompson, 30 years old, working nights as she finished her nursing degree. Quiet, reliable, never the type to linger. Some said she worked 2 other jobs just to survive. She lived alone downtown in a small apartment. No one knew much else. Maya blended into the background, until the moment someone needed her. Then she became the only one who mattered. For 3 months, Maya had been assigned to Sophie's wing. By chance, by scheduling. But in that time, something unexplainable had shifted. After Sophie's mother passed away, the little girl had stopped speaking altogether. She understood, she listened, but she gave no words, no laughter, no cries, only silence. Even Adam, her father, had to whisper to her, as though his own daughter might shatter if he spoke too loud. But that night, when Maya sang, the silence broke. Sophie reached out. For the first time in 2 years, she held on. Adam was a successful man, owner of a chain of bookstores spread across the state. Once, work had consumed him, but after his wife's death, he had pulled back, drowning himself in routine and leaving managers to run things. Grief gave him no room for joy, no space for hope, until that moment. Until he watched a stranger step into his daughter's storm and calm it with nothing but kindness and a song. Not love, not yet, but something gentler, something like air after drowning. Hope. Adam backed away quietly into the hallway. The hospital lights hummed faintly overhead. Nurses passed in low voices. But to him, the world felt altered. A stranger had reminded him what it looked like to care. He didn't know her yet, not her past, not her reasons for the quiet way she carried herself. But he knew one thing. He wanted to. The next morning, life resumed its rhythm. The sky hung gray with early rain, buses ran late, and Maya stood at the curb with a lukewarm paper cup of coffee. Her scrubs were wrinkled, her backpack heavy, not with books, but with exhaustion. 2 jobs, full-time classes, and long nights caring for children like Sophie left her with no breath to spare. Crossing the street toward the hospital, a car whipped around a yellow light too quickly. Its bumper clipped her backpack, jolting her off balance. Maya stumbled hard, palms scraping the pavement, coffee spilling in a brown arc across the sidewalk. The driver never slowed. A man in a suit on the corner looked, then walked away. Typical, Maya thought bitterly. She rose slowly, brushed dirt off her hands, and limped toward the staff entrance. 5 minutes before her shift, no one noticed the drag in her right leg. She didn't mention it. There was no point. This was life. You kept walking. Her shift was long. Sophie resisted breakfast, curling in on herself when the physical therapist arrived. Maya coaxed her with patience, offering a lavender cloth, narrating each tiny step of the routine as though it were a story. When Sophie's toy elephant rolled under the bed, Maya crouched low to fetch it. Pain jolted her knee. A sharp hiss slipped from her lips before she forced herself upright again. She didn't know Adam had been watching. He stood in the doorway silently, arms folded. He said nothing. He simply observed, then turned and left. Maya tucked the toy into Sophie's arms and carried on. By the end of her shift, her body was heavy as stone. She didn't see the bruise forming deep under her scrubs. In the break room, she opened her locker and froze. Resting atop her spare jacket was a small plastic bag. Inside, a box of pain relief gel, medicated plasters, and a roll of compression wrap. Taped to the side was a scrap of notepad paper, written in neat, careful handwriting. "Take care. Someone is watching." There was no name, no signature, just the words. Maya stared at it, her chest tightening with something she hadn't felt in a long time. Gratitude, confusion, warmth. She scanned the empty room, half expecting someone to appear and laugh. No one did. Later, she asked a few nurses casually. All shook their heads. One joked she had a secret admirer. Maya only smiled faintly and tucked the note into her pocket. That night, she sat in her dim apartment, textbooks open beside Sophie's chart. But her mind wasn't on the dosage tables. It circled back to the note, the supplies carefully chosen. Not random, not careless. Someone had seen her limp. Someone had cared enough not to ask questions, but to help anyway. Small, yes, but sometimes small things arrive like rain after drought. Quiet, necessary, and just enough. Maya lay down with her hand resting over her knee. Not because of the pain, but because of the thought. Across town, Adam sat by Sophie's bed, watching her sleep. Her breaths were steady, her chest rising and falling peacefully. In the quiet, he still heard the lullaby from the night before. Not as sound, but as memory, soft yet powerful. He remembered the way Maya had winced when she bent to pick up the toy. He remembered that she said nothing, never complained, always focused on Sophie. And he did not write the note for recognition. He did not expect her to know it was him. It was just something he could do. That was all. But he did not sleep easily that night because kindness, when given without name, has a strange way of echoing back. The call came just after lunch. Maya was washing her hands at the nurse's station when her name echoed from the intercom. Maya Thompson to the administrative office immediately. The tone was sharp. Final a few heads turned. She dried her hands slowly, willing herself to stay calm. But by the time she reached the elevator, her palms were damp again, this time from nerves. Inside the office, the air felt too still. Dr. Kelman sat behind his desk, a senior administrator beside him, arms folded. A file lay open, a report clipped to the top. Maya, Kelman began. The blood panel results from Sophie Reyes's case last Tuesday. Where are they? Maya's stomach dropped. They were sent to the lab. I triple-checked the forms. They were logged in. The administrator cut in, but the vials were never received. You were the last in the chain of custody. Her voice caught. That was the night Sophie had a seizure. I remember rushing in to help. I put the vials in the transport box, but the words sounded thin in the silence. Kelman closed the folder. Until this is resolved, we're placing you on temporary suspension. The room tilted. She opened her mouth, but only managed. Please, I didn't misplace anything. Kelman gave a short nod toward the door. That evening, Adam stood at the end of the pediatric hallway, frowning. A different nurse was tending to Sophie. When he asked about Maya, the answers were vague. Q's not on shift today. Probably a swap, but a young tech whispered something else. There's a situation with a lost lab sample. She might be suspended. Adam remembered that night clearly. Sophie had seized badly. Maya had barely left their side. There was no way she'd neglected protocol. He made 2 calls, one to security, one to someone in records. The next morning, Maya sat in her apartment, her work badge tucked away, trying to calculate how long she could last without a paycheck. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Kelman's assistant. Please report to office, matter resolved. She returned, shoulders tense. We reviewed the footage, the administrator said. It shows you handing off the box to a lab tech at 6:42 p.m. I told you, Maya whispered. The tech failed to log it properly. You're reinstated. She nodded slowly. Hoare viewed the footage? The administrator hesitated. Mr. Reyes, he personally requested access and found the timestamp. Her breath caught. Back in the pediatric wing that afternoon, Maya stepped into Sophie's room. The little girl lit up, arms outstretched, no longer shy or afraid. Maya knelt beside her, hugging her gently. Adam stood by the window looking tired. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. She rose, walked over. You didn't have to do that. I know, he said softly. But you did, he shrugged. You were doing your job, taking care of my daughter. Someone had to speak up. Why help me? She asked. Adam glanced away, then back. Because someone needed to. Maya didn't answer. But back at the nurse's station, she pulled a folded note from her pocket and quietly scribbled on the back of a supply slip. Maybe not everyone sees me as a shadow. She tucked it into her locker where no one would see. She would never tell Adam how much it meant, but something inside her had shifted. Note very defense needed to be loud to matter. Sometimes the quietest ones said the most. The hospital was buzzing with quiet excitement. Posters for the annual pediatric gala appeared in every hallway, adorned with stars, teddy bears, and pastel fonts. It was a big event, something the hospital held each year to raise funds for critical children's cases. Doctors prepped speeches, administrators organized silent auctions, and nurses whispered about dresses and dates in the break room. Maya tried to keep her head down. When the invitation came through internal email, she barely glanced at it before hitting delete. It was not that she did not care. She did. But the thought of standing in a ballroom surrounded by polished shoes, shimmering gowns, and confident laughter made her stomach twist. She had no dress, no money to buy one, no time between her shifts and night classes. But beyond the practicalities, there was something deeper. She did not belong there. Not in that world. Not in chandeliers and champagne and polite applause. Her place was beside hospital beds, in quiet rooms with beeping monitors where her hands could do something useful. She told herself it was fine. The evening before the gala, she stayed late to organize Sophie's meds. The little girl had fallen asleep early, clutching a stuffed lamb someone had donated last week. The hallway outside the pediatric wing was empty as Maya walked toward the staff room to grab her coat. That was when she saw him. Adam stood by the door holding a long rectangular box wrapped in simple brown paper tied with a navy ribbon. He looked awkward, like he had rehearsed something, but was already regretting it. From his grandfather's recordings, Adam recalled here. She stopped a few feet away. I didn't expect you, she said. He hesitated. I know this is last minute and probably presumptuous. She raised an eyebrow gently. I heard you're not going to the gala, he continued. And that's perfectly okay. I just thought if you changed your mind. He held out the box. Her heart beat a little faster. I hope you don't take this the wrong way, he said, lowering his voice. But I saw this and thought it might suit you. It's simple, and I know I'm not someone who does this often. There was a pause. Then he added quietly. Will you be my first date? In a long time. Maya blinked, caught completely off guard. He was serious. Not charming, not coy, just sincere. Nervous even. She took the box, her fingers brushing his, just for a moment. The warmth startled her more than she expected. He didn't wait for an answer. No pressure, he said softly. Just think about it. And then he turned and left. Back in her room, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the box for a long time before untying the ribbon. Inside was a deep sapphire dress folded neatly in white tissue. It was elegant but understated. The kind of dress someone might wear to a quiet, meaningful celebration. No sequins, no dramatic cut, just a soft drape, a gentle neckline, and a kind of quiet strength in the stitching. The she held it up against her. It looked perfect, suspiciously perfect. She stepped into it carefully, pulling it over her shoulders and standing in front of the mirror. It fit like it had been made for her. That was when she noticed the note tucked into the corner of the box. Asmal card handwritten in a firm, slanted style. She never got the chance to wear it, I thought. Maybe now is the right time for it to live. Maya's breath caught him. She folded the card slowly, pressing her fingers into the crease. Of course, the dress was not just a dress. It had a story, a memory, a weight. It had belonged to Adam's wife. Suddenly, the perfect fit no longer felt like a compliment. It felt like a ghost. Maya sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, still wearing the dress. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirror, elegant, composed, and entirely unsure of who she was anymore. The dress was beautiful, but she could not help feeling like she was borrowing someone else's place. The grand ballroom shimmered under crystal chandeliers, casting golden light over tables dressed in white linen and polished silverware. The hospital's annual gala was in full swing. Glasses clinked, conversations hummed, and soft music floated through the room like warm perfume. Maya stood near the entrance, frozen for a moment. The second she stepped in, something shifted. Not a real hush, but a perceptible change in the air. as if her presence had tilted the room's focus. She could feel the eyes, curious, surprised, some warm, some not. In her sapphire gown, her golden hair swept into a soft bun, she was unrecognizable, even to herself. Not the exhausted pediatric nurse in sensible shoes and worn scrubs. Tonight she felt like a borrowed version of someone else, someone who belonged here. A few guests offered polite compliments. "You look lovely. Didn't even recognize you." She smiled, nodded, kept walking. Then, as she neared the refreshment table, she heard it. "Isn't that the dress?" "What do you mean from his wife?" "I saw her holding it once. It was for their anniversary. Gayla, she died that fall." A pause. "I didn't realize he kept it, and now it's on her." "Did he seriously give that to a nurse?" "That's bold. H looks great, but still, who does that? Dressing the new girl in the last one's memory. God, that gives me chills. No offense, but isn't it a little sad? She's sweet, but maybe just a stand-in." They didn't know she was near. Or maybe they didn't care. The room didn't dim, but Maya felt like it had. Her chest tightened. She turned away, gripping the back of a nearby chair to steady herself. Her fingers dug into the fabric. She hadn't wanted to come. She'd told herself she wasn't ready, that she didn't belong. And now, strangers had voiced the exact fear she had tried to silence. She wasn't the woman Adam had once loved, and she never would be. The dress didn't just fit her body, it fit someone else's memory. And suddenly, she couldn't tell if that had been the intention all along. She slipped away before dessert. No goodbyes, just the echo of her heels on the hallway tile. The quiet outside felt better than the storm inside her chest. Back home, she didn't change. She stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, coat on the floor, dress still clinging, like a question she didn't want to ask. The woman looking back at her was elegant and entirely unfamiliar. She stared at the reflection, then whispered, "You weren't chosen because you're you. You were chosen because you fit a space someone else left behind." Her throat tightened. Anger flickered. Not at herself, for believing even for a moment that she belonged in that ballroom, that she could be someone's first date again. Then came the guilt, the thought that she had stepped into a sacred memory without realizing it. And maybe that meant she didn't belong there at all. She unzipped the dress carefully, folded it gently, and slid the box beneath her bed. The next morning, she called the hospital and requested a shift reassignment. No explanation. She replied to Adam's text with a simple, "Thank you for last night." Nothing more. She left the rest unread. For days, she moved quietly through the pediatric wing, avoiding his path, clinging to routine, charts, meds, numbers. Data was easier than feelings, but she missed Sophie's laugh. Adam's soft voice, the lightness in her chest when she was around them. Like maybe, just maybe, she could start again. Still, every time she considered going back, she heard those voices. "You're just a replacement. You fit the memory. You're not her." So, she stayed away. Because if she let herself feel everything, the fall would hurt more, and deep beneath it all, a wound she had never dared name, the guilt from her sister's death, still whispered to her that love was dangerous, because loving people meant you might lose them. And Maya Thompson wasn't sure she could survive losing again. The hospital hallways were quieter than usual, the kind of quiet that came only at the end of a long, cold year. Outside the windows, the world was preparing for fireworks and midnight kisses. Inside, Maya was just finishing her shift, tugging her coat from the back of the break room chair and rubbing tired eyes. She was halfway to the exit when a nurse from pediatrics came rushing down the hall. "Maya, room 417. Sophie's having a seizure, a bad one." The words hit like a slap. Maya dropped her coat and ran. By the time she reached the room, chaos had already taken hold. The night doctor was prepping a sedative, monitors blaring erratically. Sophie's small body arched, trembling uncontrollably, her face pale and slick with sweat. Adam stood in the corner, frozen, hands clenched and shaking. His eyes found Ma's the second she entered. No one told her what to do. She crossed the room, climbed onto the bed, and pulled Sophie into her arms, careful with the IV lines. The child's body was stiff and jerking, but Maya held her close, shielding her. She whispered something, then louder. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." The same lullaby again and again, her voice cracking but steady. "You make me happy when skies are gray." The tremors slowed. Sophie's breathing evened out, hitching through soft sobs. Her fingers gripped Mia's scrub top. Her forehead pressed against Mia's collarbone. The alarms dulled. The doctor stepped in and administered the sedative. The crisis passed, but nothing broke the stillness of that moment. Maya rocking gently, singing, through tears, and the little girl who had once never spoken, now whimpering softly in her arms. Adam collapsed to the floor. He slid down the wall, legs splayed, hands over his face. The room emptied slowly, but his storm had just begun. When everything calmed, Maya lowered herself beside him, still holding Sophie. "I thought I lost her," he whispered. "You didn't," Maya replied softly. "I've never been that afraid in my life," his voice broke. "Not even when they told me my wife wouldn't make it." She didn't speak. Her presence was quiet, grounding. "And I've never," he hesitated, "I've never seen anyone walk into something that terrifying and make it look like love." He looked at her, glassy-eyed, but sure. "I'm not good at this, starting over, knowing what's right. But what you did for her, for me, I can't ignore that." She blinked, stunned. "I gave you that dress," he said gently. "Not because I wanted to relive anything, but because you deserve something beautiful, and I needed a way to ask you to stay." Her throat tightened. He reached out, took her free hand. "You didn't wear that dress to replace anyone. You wore it because you're the first person who sees us, both of us, and stays." Her tears weren't about shame anymore. They were about being seen fully. When nurses came to transfer Sophie back to bed, Maya and Adam stayed behind in the quiet waiting room. The hum of the vending machine the only sound. Maya turned toward him. "I've never told anyone this." He nodded, still holding her hand. 5 years ago, I was watching my nephew. He fell just a short fall, but hit his head. I panicked and called my sister. She rushed to come home and was in a car accident. She didn't survive. His expression didn't change, but his grip tightened. "I've carried it ever since," Maya said. "I wasn't careful. I killed her." "No," Adam said firmly. She swallowed. "I don't let people close. I think if I do, I'll lose them, or worse, hurt them." He sat with that for a moment, then quietly. "We don't get to choose how our past ends." She looked up. "But we do get to choose how the next part begins." She tried to speak, but no words came, just a shaky breath. He leaned closer, rested his forehead gently against hers. "I want my next part to begin with you." And as fireworks cracked far beyond the hospital walls, Maya didn't run. She didn't doubt. She let herself be held. The smell of old paper and fresh paint filled the back corner of Reyes & Co.'s bookstore. It had once been a forgotten space used for storage, stacked with unopened boxes and worn-out displays. But now, sunlight pulled on the freshly laid rugs, illuminating a low shelf filled with books wrapped in soft covers. Stuffed animals perched beside reading pillows. In the center, a sign carved by hand in warm wood letters read, "The Sunshine Room." It was Maya's idea, but it was Adam's heart that brought it to life. After New Year's, after that long night in the hospital, something in both of them had shifted. There were no grand declarations, no promises too big to hold, just quiet understanding. Adam stopped pretending. He didn't watch her walk into the pediatric wing each morning. Maya stopped pretending she didn't wait for Sophie's giggle echoing down the hallway. So when Adam asked weeks later if she might help him build a space for children recovering from long hospital stays, a space of calm, of color, of story, she said yes without hesitation. "I wanted to feel safe," he had said, "like a place where someone could find a little bit of magic even if they're still scared." Maya smiled and wrote down the first word that came to mind. Sunshine. They worked side by side. Maya picked books about kindness and quiet courage. Stories that didn't shy away from fear, but always ended in light. Adam arranged shelves low enough for tiny hands to reach. When they disagreed, they laughed. When they agreed, they built. The room opened on a quiet Thursday afternoon. No ribbon cutting, no press release. Just Maya standing in the doorway, watching Sophie toddle into the center of the room with wide eyes. The little girl ran her hand across a soft armchair and pointed to a book with a yellow cover. Maya knelt beside her. "Do you want me to read this one?" Sophie nodded, and then, without warning, without coaxing, she spoke. "Sunshine," she whispered. Adam froze in the doorway. He looked at Maya. She was crying. Sophie said it again, this time more clearly. pointing up at the carved sign. Sunshine. It was her first word in months. Adam slowly walked in and sat behind them close enough to touch. But he didn't. He just watched. Maya opened the book and began to read, her voice steady and soft. It was a story about a girl who planted a garden in the middle of a storm. About how something beautiful could still grow even when the world didn't feel safe. Sophie leaned her head against Maya's shoulder. Adam closed his eyes for a moment and breathed in. This was not a grand finale. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. The hospital still called. Sophie still had checkups. Maya still had night shifts. Life was not magically fixed. But there, in that small corner of a quiet bookstore, surrounded by stories, something had begun to heal. 2 hearts, 1 room, and the softest word in the world, spoken by a girl who had once forgotten how, echoed into the shelves. Sunshine. The table was small, tucked by the window of a quiet bistro that smelled faintly of rosemary and fresh bread. The lights were low, the music soft and almost forgettable, just enough to fill the silences without interrupting them. Maya sat across from Adam, her hands resting around a warm ceramic cup. She wore no makeup, no heels, just a pale blue sweater and the same quiet smile that had once stopped a child's tears with nothing but a song. Adam wore a collared shirt, slightly wrinkled, sleeves rolled up to the elbows. He looked at ease, but Maya noticed the way his foot tapped softly under the table. Nervous, a little unsure. She liked that he was still capable of being unsure. The waiter brought their food, pasta, simple, comforting, and left them in peace. So, Adam said after a few bites. This isn't a gala, no ballroom, Maya replied, a small grin tugging at her lips. No borrowed dresses. He shook his head. And no ghost tonight. She looked down for a second, her expression unreadable. Then she met his eyes. Good, she said softly. I'm tired of living in borrowed shadows. Adam reached across the table, palm up. She placed her hand in his without hesitation. They stayed like that, fingers laced gently, neither rushing the moment. It took me too long to ask you out, he said. I kept thinking I had to wait for the right time, or the right reason. Maya tilted her head slightly, and now he took a deep breath and smiled. Not the polite kind, but the kind that reaches the eyes, that crinkles the edges. Now I know I don't need a reason. He let the words settle between them, then added more quietly. This time, it's not about healing anyone. It's not about Sophie or guilt or second chances this time. It's just about sitting across from someone who makes me want to live one more day. Maya blinked. Her throat tightened unexpectedly. She didn't look away. You make me feel like I can stay, she whispered. He stood slowly, walked around the table, and extended a hand. This time not as a gesture of comfort or protection, but something lighter. Beginning. Maya stood too. She looked up at him, eyes warm, heart open. Their kiss was unhurried. No promises, no plans, just 2 people who'd walked through silence, sorrow, storms, and found each other on the other side. Outside the night was still, the world kept turning. But in that small bistro under soft lights, a first date became something more. And this time, neither of them was alone. Thank you for joining us on the journey of A Room with 2 Hearts, a story not just about love, but about healing, forgiveness, and 2 souls learning how to begin again. If Maya, Adam, and little Sophie touched something in your heart today, we would be honored if you helped us share this feeling with more people. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss the next story.